3 or 4 weeks is we're going to look at some spiritual disciplines, all right? And this kind of goes a little bit with the whole trying to get y'all actually reading the Bible every day. This kind of is going to go hand in hand a little bit with it. And one of the things that, I'm in seminary, master's in seminary, master's of divinity in seminary. And one of the classes they make us take is a class called Spiritual Formations, which is dealing with spiritual disciplines. And there are people in that class that have been in the ministry their whole lives already, and they're just now going back. And so even though they're really godly men who've been in ministry for a long time, they still make them do a class dealing with spiritual disciplines. Because it's not something that's easy for us to do. It's difficult, even for somebody who's been in the church and serving the church for a long time. And so that's why I want to help you guys, because it's important for your growth and your relationship with Christ is to discipline yourself to be, spiritually minded. And so that's one of the things we're going to look at the next few weeks. This week we'll just talk a little bit generic spiritual discipline, and then we'll talk about like your prayer life. What is the value of prayer life? What does it look like to have a good prayer life? How do you pray? We'll talk about stuff like that. We'll talk about worship. Sometimes we sing a song here on Wednesday nights. A lot of times, sometimes I think it's a little silly. Well, I know. But we'll talk about kind of the value of worship, and it's not just singing a whole lot of different components to worship, but it's basically the recognition of who God is, and you're supposed to be focusing on God. It's more than even the words you're saying or anything else. It's about focusing on God at that time. And that's why we do that, because we're supposed to recognize who God is and then praise Him for that. And that's kind of a part of our worship when we do that. So anyways, we'll talk about that.
It's about getting your mind ready
for... It's about recognizing who God really is. Letting go of everything else and recognizing that God is really the God of the Bible. He's really the creator of everything. He's really all-powerful. He's really deserving of all our worship and praise. And it's just putting your heart in that right perspective. So anyways, we'll talk more about that in detail in the coming weeks. But that's what we're going to do these next few weeks. And then kind of the first week or two of November is when we'll start looking at the different religious beliefs. And we'll look at the way far out there Scientology. We'll look at eventually even different denominations like Methodists and Presbyterian and things like that.
Okay, this has nothing to do with what we're talking about. But these not right people keep being on my lawn all day, and it drives me insane. So is it okay to scare them?
Since it's Halloween.
Like, what do you mean not right people?
They're just
dumb.
They're just, like, is it young kids?
Yeah, they're like my age and younger.
Yeah, you can scare them, that's fine.
Oh, do they know?
The Bible doesn't say that, so I'm not scared, so it's okay.
Oh, I've got a question.
Yes.
What is Messianic Jew?
We've talked about this before. Those are the ones who believe in that Jesus is the Messiah.
We'll
talk.
We'll talk about that.
We will. That was the guy that came here. He's a Messianic Jew. They're ethnically Jewish. So because Jewish is a weird thing where they're both. It's a religious belief, but it's also like an ethnicity. So they're ethnically Jew, and they still practice some of the same practices
do they have different
culturally.
denominations like Christianity?
We'll
talk about that. Yeah,
in 2 weeks.
Yeah, in a few weeks we'll talk about that. But yeah, they are. I don't know that there would be separate denominations. They're like a separate denomination within it. But then there's four Messianic Jews?
No, not. Are you talking about Messianic or Jews?
She's just talking about Messianic Jews, right? Yeah, I think that's just
the Messianic. That is a denomination of Jews.
Yeah, I think that's just like a denomination.
They've got their own denomination.
Because they're going to still practice some of the same cultural things as the Jews do, but they believe that Christ is the Messiah.
Why do they not eat ham?
I get it.
We'll talk about that.
Let's move on, because we're way behind. We'll talk about all that stuff, because Judaism will probably take a couple weeks to do Judaism, probably a couple weeks to do Islam. So this will take a while to work through it, and we'll explain all that stuff, okay? Alright, so I don't want to take too long on that, because it's already said. We're going to start with 1 Timothy, and there's a couple verses here, and this is going to kind of be the focus of our study the next few weeks. This is kind of the central idea of what we're going to be talking about. Before we do that, just a question. Does anybody know who wrote 1 Timothy?
Timothy.
I was hoping for that answer. No!
See, I knew it wasn't Timothy.
Alright, so who is it then?
I don't know.
Alright, whenever somebody asks you who wrote a book in the New Testament...
It doesn't mean that's the person who wrote it.
Yes.
Luke.
No.
John.
No.
Paul.
There you go. Whenever... Put it in your pocket.
Oh,
Graham.
I've got another question.
Hold on. Graham, put it in your pocket. Because you're going to get distracted by it. Put it in your pocket or I'll take it up. Anytime somebody asks you about who wrote a book in the New Testament, guess Paul, because he wrote like half the books. So just, if you're ever on a game show and they ask that question, guess Paul. Do what? Yeah, once you get past Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, who were written by Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, once you get past those, over half are written by Paul. So if you ever just
the other half is written by Saul.
Paul and Saul
It's the same
No.
person.
I know, but like,
Just stop.
All right, what was your question?
Okay, it's like not on topic, but
Okay,
it's
then-
on topic with the Bible.
Let me ask the question, and I'll decide if I'm going to answer it or not, because we got to move on.
Is it?
I was listening.
Is it pronounced? Is it pronounced Zacchaeus or Zacchaeus?
Zacchaeus, I think. There's
Zacchaeus.
like Zacchaeus.
Oh dang! I thought I was like.
Now, with that said, though, there's a lot of times names of the Bible there's debate about how the exact. So it's not like there's a huge right or wrong necessarily. Because like Philistine, some people say it's Philistine, some people say it's
Philistines?
Philistine. Because I always pronounce it Philistines. Philistine sounds weird to me. I think it's Philistines, but anyways, that's the way I'm talking. All right, moving on.
Philistines.
Who is he writing this? Who is Paul writing to? There, okay, that's an easy one. He's writing it, well, yes. But he's writing a specific letter from Paul to Timothy. And Paul is like the mentor, and he's writing to kind of his tutor, or not his tutor, but like his student that is now actually the pastor in Ephesus, the church in Ephesus. And basically when he writes 1 Timothy, 2 Timothy, and Titus, those are all personal letters from Paul to those guys, and they're in the ministry. And Paul is basically giving them advice and encouraging them in the ministry. Okay?
Was Titus a person?
Titus was. Titus was another person that was a young man in the ministry that was like Paul's student, so
Do
to
they have
speak.
a book, Titus?
Mm-hmm. These are sometimes called the pastoral epistles because they're written to 1st, 2 Timothy to Timothy, and then Titus to Titus, and they're pastors, and Paul is writing to them. All right. So this is Paul writing to him, giving him encouragement about being in the ministry, serving in a church, and giving him kind of advice about how to do it. All right. And who wants to read this?
Exercise yourself
All
toward
right, not all at once.
Exercise yourself toward godliness. For boldly exercise profit. For boldly exercise profits a little, but godliness is profitable for all things, having promise of life that now is and of that which is to come.
Okay, so this is basically, think of this almost as like a military, think of like Paul as almost a military officer, and Timothy, will you leave it up there too, Brian, please? And this is like his subordinate. This is like a command for him to exercise himself. And Timothy's a young man, he just started in the ministry.
How would you exercise? Like today we have like the...
We got to move on.
Don't even
Sorry.
ask that.
But, let's see, now you let me lose my train of thought. No, he's young in the ministry, though, and so one of the things I would assume, and I think this is a pretty safe assumption, is for him to have risen to this level so quickly, he was probably a very godly man. All right, to be a young person, probably late teens, early 20s, and he's the pastor of a church, he's going to be a very godly man. And for Paul to trust him to take over as the pastor in Ephesus, he's going to be a godly man. And yet Paul is still commanding him to exercise himself towards godliness. So this is something that even when you become more godly and you become a better person, so to speak, it's something you still have to work at. It's not something that comes easy for us.
Why doesn't Paul have a book in that way?
Because all the things he's writing is writing like letters to a church. So like when it says the book of 1st and 2nd Corinthians, it's a letter from Paul to the church in Corinth. And then this is a letter to Timothy.
Where's Corinth?
It's in that over there.
Okay.
Well,
Like it's-
I'll put a
where's
map
it?
up at some point, but it's all kind of in the Mediterranean area. Okay, because all this is taking place within the Roman Empire at that time, so it's going to be all kind of in the Mediterranean
Korah,
area.
which means heart.
In what language?
I don't know, but it means heart.
In some language. All right. Anyways,
Okay.
but this is a command not only to Timothy, but it's also a command. Even though it's Paul writing to Timothy, the Holy Spirit's also inspiring it and is directing it us. So this is the command for our own life, to exercise ourselves towards godliness. And the word exercise there is where we get our English word gymnasium. And what do you do in a gymnasium or a
You
gym?
exercise.
You exercise, you train. All right, so that's where the word comes from.
Gymnastics.
Do what?
Work out.
You do gymnastics, yes. And actually, if you go back to the original Greek, a lot of times when they would exercise and they would compete, a lot of times they would do it naked. Now,
Oh god.
why do you think they would do that?
Because they wanted to emphasize how amazing the human body is.
Well,
No.
there's
Okay.
I know.
Well, then I
So
don't
that
know.
nobody was cheating?
No.
Why would they be cheating at working out?
well, or when you're competing even. Answer the question and bring us back.
Okay. One of the reasons is because the clothes that they wore was their only pair of clothing.
Okay, that's true.
That's their toga. The toga was the only pair
Right.
of clothing that they had.
Togo?
That's what they wore back then.
So they took it off because when you're competing, in like running events, boxing events, they sweat it. They sweat. So
Yeah,
they took it off to preserve their linens.
right. And the other thing with the togas, a lot of times they were very loose, kind of loose fitting, and they kind of flapped around. So it's also kind of this idea of, like you look at athletes today, like Usain Bolt, who's a sprinter. If you look at what he wears, it's really tight fitting, close fitting. It's because they didn't want anything to slow them down or just even just a split second, any kind of wind resistance that slowed them down a little bit. So it's kind of this idea of stripping, getting rid of everything so you could compete is absolute best of your ability. It's getting rid of anything that's slowing you down. And like I said, it's the same idea with like you look at the swimmers or the sprinters. They have very aerodynamic clothing, so to speak.
Yeah,
They don't have any resistance
Is there a
whatsoever.
cap because their fur like slows them down? Because that wouldn't make any sense to me.
It doesn't want to get their hair wet.
I guess it's possible if they have long hair. Yeah, I guess it's possible.
Okay.
Did you call it fur though?
Yeah,
she's always
I
called
call it
fur.
Okay, good. Okay,
Like
just checking.
Fur.
All right. But anyways, it's kind of this idea of getting rid of anything that would slow you down. And if we'll look here at Hebrews chapter 12, verse 1, this is not Paul writing. This is probably one of his close associates, but it's kind of presenting the same idea. Let us lay aside every weight and the sin which so easily ensnares us, and let us run with endurance the race that is set before us. So it's getting rid of any of these barriers, anything that's distracting us. The goal is exercising ourselves towards godliness, or training ourselves or disciplining ourselves. Okay, different translations translate it differently. But this idea of disciplining or exercising towards godliness, that's your goal, right? And you're trying to get rid of anything that's weighing you down, any kind of sin or anything in your life that's distracting you or hurting you from reaching that goal. So what are some things in our life that are barriers in that effort? Because the idea of godliness is to become like Christ, is to be Christ-like. So what is a barrier in our lives that slows us down in that?
Society people.
Society and dumb people. All right, anyone else?
Could it be something distracting?
Yeah, it could be something in your personal, like something
Video
personal to you.
games.
Okay, yes.
What's the question?
What are some things that can slow you down or hinder you from becoming more godly, becoming more like
Eating a
Christ?
brownie instead of reading Proverbs.
Okay, that's true.
No, I haven't done that yet. That's later.
I'm glad you're so optimistic.
Video games.
Okay, video games.
So you have 2 video games.
Yeah, so video games is the clear one. Maren just looks confused.
I'm trying to think.
Your phone.
No.
Sometimes it could even be ourselves. Sometimes I think it's ourselves is the biggest one because
We don't discipline ourselves.
Have you-
as much.
have you-
we want. Well, the thing is we want to be in control. We don't. As much as we say we want God in control, a lot of times we don't really want Him in control, even though He always is. But we want to take control of our lives and do it how we want.
That's why farmers fund the war. I mean, like, they had farmers. What war are you talking about?
What war is she talking about?
I mean, like, they had disciplined farmers.
We got his boxing and her farmers. I don't know.
And
what
That was
nothing's
just weird.
stupid yet.
Well, you have the Catholic thing from last week.
That's like a long time ago.
All right.
Asian Catholics and
Have you
black
seen the Bible
Catholics.
series?
No,
Yes, I
not
have.
black Catholics.
All right.
The
Oh, we need to. I have. It's pretty good. All right. So. Ooh.
blacks aren't Catholic, are they?
There can be. There's no ethnic division in. I mean, there sometimes can be cultural differences, but there's not like a set different type of Catholicism.
Pretty sure.
Well,
When we talk about
what we talk
Catholicism,
about based on this came up in our church history class last night. Based on some of your cultural things, there may be some differences, but there's still one pope. There's not like a set division in between.
I don't know. It's just this one girl. She's always talking with the Pope. And they don't like these people over here that are Catholic, and they never talk about anything. And she's up here, mass this and.
Well, anyway, all right.
Oh,
All right.
okay.
Moving
That
on.
actually gets into a story. Okay, in 6th grade, we were learning about culture,
Okay.
and then in Christianity, apparently we have a pope now. Christians? Yeah.
Well, depending on, and again, this is something we really need to have this, Brian.
oh yeah.
I love how
Catholics are somewhat under the umbrella of being Christian. Okay.
Yeah, but they're not quite there.
Well,
They're still considered Christian.
But in general, they're going to be still defined under Christianity.
But they're still getting at least 1/3 white. The umbrella.
Oh.
Okay, you're still remember right? Okay, good. Yes, they're kind of in that gray area. They're kind of in that gray area, so to speak. But they're for like when you're studying about it, they're going to be under Christianity. they're going to be considered under Christianity. So anyway, all right. Any other barriers or things though? And again, sometimes it's just anything in our life. It basically what it comes down is anything in our life that we're putting above God, which could be a whole host of things. Okay. Do what?
Never thought.
Write it down. They'll understand.
I'm ready.
You don't have to share if you don't want to.
You should share.
I remember at the barbecue thing, you cracked it. I don't know why. I always call something.
Okay. Do you have it or not?
Oh, I have it, but I don't want to share it.
Okay. Then we're gonna move on. All right. So is this something that's easy to do though? All these things we're talking about, how getting rid of all these things that are distracting us from God, this idea of exercising ourselves towards godliness, is this something that's going to be easy?
No.
No, it's not going to be something easy. Why is it not easy?
Because
We don't talk, we don't, we're not taught to self-discipline.
Okay.
we've grown up putting these things before Him, and now it's going to be difficult to break that habit.
Okay. What is it even easy for somebody who's very spiritually disciplined? Again, looking at Timothy. Timothy was somebody who was a very godly man, and yet he's still urging him that he has to discipline himself. It's not something that's going to come naturally for him. In fact, if you look, I don't have it up there, I don't believe, but if you continue in chapter 4, if you look on down, it says, "For to this end," the goal of being godly, being Christ-like, it says, to this end we both labor and suffer reproach. Laboring, I mean, when you think of laboring, you're thinking of like stressful, hard work. So even for Timothy, who probably would be more godly than anybody in this room, I mean, I'm not trying to be, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
No offense.
And yet he's still going to have to labor at it. He's still going to have to strive to do it. So it's not something that comes naturally for any of us. And that's really the root of this, and we're going to see this in Romans chapter 3, is it's something that's hard for all of us. Billy Graham, I don't know what's going to happen when he's going to die, because I always use him as my analogies. But even for Billy Graham, it's difficult. It's not something that comes naturally to him. All right, so let's look at Romans chapter 3, verses 10 through 12.
Let us lay aside
And it's not
the
there yet.
That's Hebrews.
All right, there you go.
As it is written, there is none righteous, no, not one. There is none who understands. There is none who seeks after God. They have all turned aside. They have together become unprofitable.
Profitable.
Unprofitable. There is none who does good, no, not one.
All right, so this is all people. Before we become Christians, this is who we are. No, there's none righteous, no, not one. No, none does good. None seeks after God. This is our natural disposition. This is who we are as people, as fallen people. Stop. This is who we are. All right. This is who we are before we become a Christian. None of us are seeking after God at all. All right. So this is why it's difficult. You know, when we become a Christian, 2 Corinthians 5:17 says that we're made into a new creation and we're given a new heart. But the thing is even though we have a new heart, we're still in sinful flesh. And so, basically, we're still constantly fighting this battle of who we're going to serve. Are we going to serve God or are we going to serve the world? Are we going to serve based on our sinful flesh or are we going to serve based on our new heart given to us when we're saved and become Christian? It's a constant tension we're constantly struggling with. You know, it's something that whether it's Timothy or whether it's Billy Graham or whoever, it's constant tension we're dealing with. No matter how godly you become, we're always fighting with that. The thing is, and why we try to discipline ourselves is, the more spiritually disciplined we get, the easier that battle is. But there's a song that even talks about it. Every day we get up, we have to decide, who are we going to serve? Are we going to serve God or are we going to serve the world? Are we going to live for Him or are we going to live for ourselves?
I don't like the world.
And it's a difficult thing to do, but it's something that we're constantly having to struggle with. All right. And if you look again back at 1 Timothy chapter 4, where it says labor and suffer reproach, the thing is sometimes it's going to be really hard too, because we all face trials, we all face bad times, whether you're a believer or a non-believer. But if we're choosing to go against the grain, so to speak, a lot of times it's going to be even harder on us. Think of it in this way, of like a river. We're naturally flowing, like at the head of the river is God, is godliness. That's what we're trying to be, right? The natural flow for all of humanity, as seen by here in Romans chapter 3, is we're naturally flowing away from Him. We're just going with the flow of the river. When we're called to be godly, we're choosing to swim upstream. And that's not easy, and that's difficult. And it's going to bring on, in some ways, more heartache. But the thing is it's very easy for us, if we take our eyes off Jesus, it's very easy for us to begin to drift down the river, because that's what everybody else is doing.
Yeah, I'm drowned in that.
And that's why it's something we have to work on to spiritually discipline ourselves, because if not, we're going to drift down the river like everybody else. And the goal is to continue every day to fight upstream, to continue to swim. All right? And so that's why it's something that's important for us to really struggle and try to do. And one of the things we see is that it's through these difficult times, when we're trying to swim upstream and we're bringing on some of these hard times in our lives, God is using that as an opportunity to make us more godly. All right, and we're actually going to see this in Isaiah chapter 1, verse 25. We'll read this and see if you can understand what he's saying here.
What do you want?
Isaiah chapter 1, verse 25.
Okay.
If you don't have it, that's fine.
No, well, I have it.
Okay.
I just had another one.
Don't worry.
You know me, I skip around.
I will turn my hand against you and thoroughly, I said thoroughly, and thoroughly purge away your
Dross.
okay, and take away all of your.
Alloy. All right. So what is this verse talking about?
Okay, I will turn my hand against you
and
thoroughly purge.
Take
Away
away.
your dross. Okay, first of all, what is dross?
Well, we'll talk about it. What do you think this? What do you think this is talking about? Any idea?
Well, purge means like. I'm taking it from the movie.
He will help us in our battle.
All right. What this is talking about? Basically, what Isaiah is comparing God to in this slot. Hold on, but kind of, yeah, that's actually kind of a good idea. What he's comparing God to at this point is, in ancient times, you had like these metal workers that would work with like precious metals, like gold and stuff, especially. And I think Scott even talked about this on Sunday a couple of weeks ago. And it's this idea where they would heat the gold up as hot as they could get it, and that way they could take out all the imperfections. All right, and the imperfections would come to the top, and they would skim it off. And the goal was to make it a purer form of gold, a more valuable form of gold, right? This is what God does in our life sometimes. Sometimes when we're on that river and we're, oh yeah, it's fine. When we're on that river and we're going down it, sometimes it feels like we're being boiled alive by all the bad things in life. God's using that as an opportunity to skim off the imperfections in our life. All right, He's trying to pull out those bad things, and it's an idea of trying to make us pure.
So it was the dross, the stuff
Yeah.
from the top. Okay.
Right. How do you think the metal worker would know when he was done, when he got most of the imperfections out?
When it looked perfect.
Okay. What could he see in it?
Huh?
What could he?
Shine, his reflection.
His reflection.
Yeah.
Now, what do you think that's a picture of, though?
Move on.
No.
Okay.
What?
She does that in the movie.
I know. All right. Okay. So the metal worker is seeing his image in the gold. Now, remember, what does the gold signify?
Oh God.
Wealth.
What does the gold signify?
Power?
We're the ones being heated.
Oh.
Perfection.
We're the ones being heated.
Sin.
Just like the gold's being heated, sometimes we're being heated in our lives. So what does the gold symbolize?
Oh,
Protection.
What?
Struggles.
Protection.
No, the heat is the struggles.
Protection.
The struggles are heating us. The heat is heating the gold. So what is the gold?
God.
Our replacement.
Us. We're the gold.
I thought we were looking at.
No, hold on. The metal worker is God. He's the one that's doing the heating.
I thought we were just talking about how like the metal. Okay.
No, the metal worker's God. No. The metal worker's God, and He's looking down at us, and He's heating us up so we can pull out His imperfection. Now, you said the metal worker when he would see his reflection. So the idea is God is pulling out all of His imperfections in us so He can see His image in us.
I got it.
Remember, the goal of godliness is to become like Christ. So God is pulling out the imperfections in our lives, so when He looks down at us, He's seeing Christ. Now, we're obviously not going to get there perfectly on this side of eternity, but the idea is us reflecting Christ in our lives.
God reminds me of the Iron Patriot from Iron Man 3.
Why?
No,
we're
we're
going
going
to
to move on.
I would have said that's
wrong.
Alright, but that's the idea though, is God is trying to get His image reflected in our lives. That's when the metal worker would know the gold was made pure, is he could see his reflection. God's trying to see His reflection in our lives. And that's the idea, is He's making us pure, He's making us godlier. This is really a beautiful picture that Isaiah's painting. You know, a picture's worth 1,000 words. This one's worth several thousand words, I think.
That'd be
That's what
funny
He's showing here.
if, like, you have a project,
Uh-huh.
and the project is about, you have to have over 1,000 words.
You're doing
Put a
this?
picture, huh?
You're doing this?
No. I'm just kidding, I didn't do that. I haven't even had any projects. And that would be funny if you put a picture, and you look up and you say a picture's worth 1,000 words.
Nah, don't do that. No.
Well,
that will not end
your
well.
actions.
That will not end well. I promise you. Alright. Do what?
I said some of your actions.
No, that's true.
To me, they're worth more than a picture.
Alright, I got a quote for you real quick. This is, I love C.S. Lewis. He says that, but pain insists upon being attended to. God whispers to us in our pleasure, speaks in our conscience, but shouts in our pain. It is megaphone to rouse a deaf world. So again, that idea of us naturally drifting down the river away from God, again, sometimes he's heating us up to show us, hey, look, you're drifting away from me. Because it's easy for us to drift and we don't even realize it. If things are going good, we don't realize it. So sometimes the bad things happen in life to where God is showing us, hey, listen, you're drifting away from me. Which that is the greatest place we can be, is having that closer relationship with God. And so sometimes he's allowing the bad things in life to direct us back towards him. Because we a lot of times ignore it. But in our pain, that's when we listen. That's when we actually hear. So sometimes that's, as C.S. Lewis says, that's his megaphone to shout to us. Because that's the only way we'll hear sometimes. Alright, so why do we actually go through all this? Why do we actually go through all this to make ourselves godly? This is obviously difficult, it's tough, it's hard. It's going to make life more difficult. Why do we do this?
Yeah, to show love.
To show love? Okay.
Yeah. To not be like the rest of them.
Okay. Alright, anything else?
No.
Okay. Alright, Brian, if you'll put back up the first two verses again.
I'll turn my hand against you.
No. Alright.
Exercise. Satan told me.
Hold on, I'll read it. It says, for bodily exercise profits a little, but godliness is profitable for all things, having promises of life that now is and the life that is to come. The thing is, serving God, growing in godliness, growing more like God, there's nothing else in the world we can do that can be both profitable now and in eternity. Now, there's a lot of great things we can do. He even says bodily exercise profits a little. I mean, it's good. He's not saying don't go out and exercise. But is bodily exercise going to be profitable in eternity? No. Being the best student in school, is that going to be profitable in eternity?
Definitely not, but they try to make us do that anyway.
Well, hold on. Just like bodily exercise does profit, working hard in school profits.
That's why Terry
I'm not at all advocating you don't work hard in school.
I know,
Let me point that out. But the point is all the things we get bogged down in. Learning an instrument. Y'all are all musically talented. That's something that's good. Y'all should do that. You should utilize your talent. Now, is that going to be profitable in eternity?
No.
Well, you can play music for
Is there? Do you think you would have to learn it here in order to be able to play in heaven, though?
What's the question?
No, don't worry about it. I was just saying, I don't know that just because you don't learn it now, I don't know that means you couldn't play in heaven.
Well,
So
they
everyone
everyone
has
having musically talented.
I don't know. I don't know. But I truly don't know that. But is there anything else we can do in this world? You know, getting the best job we can get, earning the most money. Those are all, earning the most money. There's a lot of things we can do in life that are profitable now, that are good things that we should do. But the point is, are those things going to be effective in eternity? Are they going to matter in eternity?
So why do we do them?
Because there's still value now. I'm not at all advocating that those things don't have value. But my point is why do we elevate those things higher than our relationship with God?
Because we think they're more important.
But in reality, they're only profitable now. This is profitable not only now, but it's also profitable in
Because
eternity.
we're living now and we're selfish people and we think about now.
That's yeah, it is. But that's something that hopefully we can open our minds up to, is this is something that is worthwhile. That's why when I try to get you guys to read your Bibles, and you may think, well, that's kind of silly and I don't know how much good it is, but growing in your relationship with God, not only is it profitable now, not only is it going to help you to be a better person now and live a more peaceful, loving life now, it also has profit in eternity. It's profitable not just now, it has profit in eternity, okay? And so that should be our perspective. This is how valuable this is. You know, it's more valuable than anything else. Growing in our relationship with God is more valuable than anything else we can do. All right? And again, the goal of this is to become like Christ. We're never going to completely get there, but that's our goal. And I think sometimes we get discouraged when we think, well, I don't feel like I can actually be that. You know, we look up at these really godly people who are adults and we think, well, I'll never be that godly. I'll never be that good a person. I'll never be that disciplined in my relationship with God. And the thing is we are going to get there. It's going to take work. It's going to take time, but you can get there. The thing is you just got to trust and know that the goal is to just get better every day, so to speak. That's one of the things I try to pray every night is, God, just help me to be closer to you tomorrow than what I am right now. You know, it's not a race to see who gets there first. It's just every day getting better. And I've said this before, I don't know if I've ever said it to y'all, but one of the things I always think is the ideal Christian life is the one in which the day you die is the day you're closest to Christ than you've ever been before. It's not about getting there, oh, I can get so far tomorrow. It's about every day getting better and always making progress, always swimming upstream. And you're occasionally going to drift back. That happens. But you get back up and you keep going again. And you just keep fighting as much as you can to grow closer to Him every day. And you make that the most important thing in your life. All right. Couple quick points and then we'll be done because it's almost 7:30. Let's look at 2 Corinthians 3:18. If you got that.
But we all with unveiled face. What? Okay.
Just read it. I'll explain.
Beholding us in the mirror of the glory of the Lord, are being transformed into the same image from glory to glory, just as by the Spirit of the Lord.
All right, now this is one of the things I want to point out mainly in this verse. It says, are being transformed. One of the things that sometimes we put so much focus on ourselves, we have to work at it, yes, but at the end of the day, it's by the grace of God. None of us can work so hard that we can become godly apart from God. All right, it's still by the power and grace of God that we're able to become more godly, okay? So don't ever look at it from the perspective of, oh, I can work, I'm more godly because I've worked at it more. You can't do it apart from God. You still have to do it completely dependent on Him. And that's an important thing to remind yourself of because it's easy. We obviously are supposed to be growing in our relationship with Him, but you don't want to get into a point where you become legalistic to where, oh, well, I'm going to be saved because I'm a good person. You know, I don't need the grace of God anymore because I've become godly. That's not what we're looking for here. Because in order to become godly, because thinking back to that Romans chapter 3, no one seeks after God. No one does good. We're still in that sinful flesh. And it's only by the grace of God we're not, that we've been given that new heart to where we actually want to grow closer to God now. But we need to make sure that we don't get kind of, arrogant about it and think, oh, well, we've become godly now. We don't need the grace of God anymore. The very act of becoming godly is completely dependent on the grace of God. We can't do it upon with any ability of ourselves. But the thing is that kind of think of it an idea of He's rewarding Himself, or rewarding us for working hard. He's going to display His grace. Does that make sense? You brought up Zacchaeus earlier. I actually like that. Now, what happened with Zacchaeus?
He climbed the sycamore tree.
All right. How was Zacchaeus saved?
Jesus went to his house. Alright, no.
Okay. How was Zacchaeus saved? I believe Zacchaeus in heaven. How is Zacchaeus in heaven?
Just because he is.
Just because he is? Just because he is. How is Zacchaeus saved? How are any of us saved?
Through Jesus.
Alright, through faith in Jesus by the grace of God, right? That's how Zacchaeus is saved, right? He's saved by the grace of God through faith in Jesus, right? Now, how does Jesus see Zacchaeus? What did you say earlier? Zacchaeus was a wee little man, and a wee little man was he. What did he do, though? He climbed to the top of the sycamore tree, right? It's kind of this idea of disciplining ourselves. We're completely dependent on the grace of God to do it, but by disciplining ourselves, it's kind of like Zacchaeus climbing to the top of the tree, that we're now in a position to be receptive of God's grace. Does that make sense?
How tall was he?
We're still dependent. He was a wee little man. That's all the song said.
Yeah,
We don't
but
know.
I mean, if he was really short, how short would that be in Bible time? Because now if you're short, you're like me.
I don't know. I would assume for a man, he was probably low 5 feet. Like just a little over 5 feet. I'm assuming. I don't know. So he was a wee little man. A wee little man was he. But my point in bringing him up, though, is he climbs to the top of the sycamore tree. And because of that, Christ sees him. And then he's saved by the grace of God. So as we spiritually discipline ourselves, it's like we're positioning ourselves along the road to where we can be receptive of God's grace. But we're still completely dependent on His grace, if that makes sense. It's never anything that we're getting to where we're earning past that. It's completely dependent on that. And so one of my professors, I'm not even going to draw it because I'm terrible at drawing. One of my professors, he used the illustration of, like I said, when we become a Christian, we get a new heart. So he drew a heart, and then he drew legs, feet for the heart. Because the idea is if we have a new heart and we have this faith, then our actions are going to add up with that, right? But the important thing to remember is the feet don't lead to the new heart. We're given the new heart, and because we have the new heart, that's why we're able to exercise ourselves towards godliness. But it's because of what God's done in our life first. So don't ever look at it in a position of, again, that we've got past His grace. We're always dependent on His grace. All right, but it's still something we need to exercise and discipline ourselves. Do what?
I thought it was legs and not arms as well.
It's just, we could draw legs, arms already too. It was just the point is, faith goes, faith does. You have feet and you go and do things, and you have to have those feet to do that. And that is a product of the new heart. All right. The only other thing I'll point out, and then we'll be done, is we're all given certain gifts and abilities. All right. Graham, are you with me? Are you focused? All right. We're all given certain abilities and talents. You look at Michael Phelps, for example. Michael Phelps is... You've never heard of Michael Phelps?
No. Have you ever watched the Olympics? Have you ever seen Subway commercials?
Yeah. Have you ever seen a Subway commercial? He's a swimmer. He's the greatest Olympian of all time. He won equal medals in one Olympics. So he's amazingly talented. Now, I could get in the pool every day. Right now I would drown because I can't swim really.
Are you
But
serious?
I really don't swim
I
well.
love
But
swimming.
I'm terrible at swimming. But hold on. I could get in the pool every day and swim and work hard, train, and I'm never going to be as good a swimmer as Michael Phelps.
That's depressing.
Well,
I'm just not. Michael Phelps is blessed with just amazing talent and ability. Now, with that said, Michael Phelps, if he never exercised or trained himself, he would never have made it to the Olympics, even though he's blessed with amazing ability. Each of us in our spiritual lives are blessed with certain spiritual abilities. Graham, focus for a minute. We're almost done. We're all blessed with amazing spiritual abilities, but the thing is, if we don't actually exercise them and train ourselves, we're never going to be able to use them as well as what we could. It's the same idea if Michael Phelps never worked hard, or any professional athlete. If they never worked hard and trained themselves, they would never be able to fully utilize those skills. They had to work hard. And it's the same thing with that. Each and every one of you have certain abilities that God has blessed you with for His service. And you have to train yourself and discipline yourself to where you can utilize those better. All right?
Well, I hope I find out soon, because I don't know yet.
Sometimes you have to be patient. Sometimes it happens. You just never
I'm
know.
not a patient person.
Well, one of the things I've found is I'm very patient on a lot of things, but there are certain things that I want,
Yeah.
and I want them now, and I'm not a patient person.
How?
I've discovered I'm extremely impatient, actually. And what I've discovered is, a lot of times, God puts me in positions where I have to wait to teach me patience.
Yeah.
And it's not a fun position to
I'm
be
trying
in.
to pull up the internet, and then it comes up like 30 seconds late.
Oh my goodness, that's a first world problem right there.
No,
That's a
It
first
is,
world problem.
Like the Oreo doesn't fit in the cup. You know?
Oh
I
my
don't have
goodness.
a problem.
All right, any other questions or comments?
Yes.
Yes.
I don't like Oreos.
You don't like Oreos, okay.
No.
In regards to the
Oreos,
lesson, hold on,
it's
in
not-
regards to the lesson first, any other questions or comments?
No. Yeah, okay, so about the farm thing.
All right, hold on, well, let me say one more thing. Next week we'll look at prayer, and we'll look at these different ways to discipline ourselves to where we can grow more godly. Because I don't, again, it's not something that comes naturally for us, so we have to work at it. And so hopefully I'll help you guys to where it'll be easier for you.
Thou hast said to walk on water, but I stumble in the sand. Oh, to run and not grow weary, Jesus, come and hold my hand. Promise me thou won't forsake me, for my life depends on thee. Engrave it on my heart, reminding that your truth has set me free. For I believe, yes I believe, please help my unbelief. For I believe, yes I believe,